Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, God bless the people of Venezuela. God bless the Venezuelans living in the U.S., American citizens, and Venezuelans living around the world. God bless America. Almost two-thirds of Venezuelans living abroad back support a U.S. military intervention to topple Maduro, poll shows. This is Latin Times. Now you have BBC, Fox News, the New York Times. Trump vows U.S. will run Venezuela until safe transfer of power. Nobel Prize winner Maria Corina Machado emerges as top potential successor after Maduro's fall. He is arrested, indicted, captured, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to this channel. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel after this for the upload. This is historic. This is huge. I'm not a fan of military interventions. This is very light years different from Iraq for about 20, 30 reasons that we'll get to later on. Contenders to replace Nicolas Maduro, Newsweek. Who is Edmundo Gonzalez? And could he be Venezuela's next president? Times now. Trump gave Maduro an ultimatum and safe passage. Weeks back, Maduro did not accept. Venezuela has around an 80% poverty rate, which is unfortunately not only terrible, but what Democrats want for the United States of America, according to many people. Hit subscribe. This is historic. Again, I'm not a fan of these types of interventions at all, but this is not a counterinsurgency conflict. I have written against counterinsurgency wars and protracted, long military quagmires. I am against those things. This is very different for a number of reasons. Although I'm not a fan of regime change. We'll get to that later on. President Trump, his foreign policy, his national security policy was to stop the flow of illegal substances into the country. If you're a morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat, and you cannot see the differences between George Bush and President Trump, here's the primary difference. This is not a counterinsurgency conflict, number one. Number two, number two, we can go on. There's many, many differences. But number two, the national security of the United States of America is to stop or impede the flow of illegal substances into the country. And so that's why this took place. But anyway, let's continue. Check this out. This is historic. Hit subscribe to this channel right now.
I'm on the East Coast, and if you're just joining us this morning, we have major breaking news. Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro has been captured by U.S. forces. President Trump confirming the large-scale U.S. military operation overnight.
Attorney General Pam Bondi confirming Maduro and his wife face drug and weapons charges in the U.S. And about 20 minutes ago, Vice President J.D. Vance revealing President Trump offered Maduro multiple off-ramps.
All this comes after explosions rocked the capital of Caracas and surrounding states early this morning. President Trump is expected to hold a news conference from Mar-a-Lago at 11 a.m. this morning. But first, he joins us now by phone. And let's get right to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. President Trump, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning.
So you've had quite a busy evening. Tell us about it.
It was slightly busy, I would say. It was very dark all over, especially in Venezuela. The team did an incredible job. They rehearsed and practiced like nobody's ever seen. And I was told by real military people that there's no other country on earth that can do such a maneuver. If you would have seen what happened, I mean, I watched it literally like I was watching a television show. And if you would have seen the speed, the violence, they say that, the speed, the violence, they use that term. It was an amazing thing, an amazing job that these people did. There's nobody else could have done anything like it.
You're at Mar-a-Lago right now. How were you able to watch this?
What is in this? I'm already.
We watched it from a room. We had a room, and we watched it, and we watched every aspect of it. We were surrounded by lots of people, including generals, and they knew everything that was happening, and it was very complex. extremely complex, the whole maneuver, the landings, the number of aircraft, which were a massive number, the number of helicopters, a different type of helicopters, different type of fighter jets. We had a fighter jet for every possible situation. And they just broke in, and they broke into places that were not really able to be broke into, you know, steel doors that were put there for just this reason. And they got taken out in a matter of seconds. I've never seen anything like it. Actually.
And you were able to watch this in real time.
Yeah, and don't forget, I've done some pretty good ones in other parts of the world. Okay, I've done some pretty good ones, but I've never seen anything like this. I was able to watch it in real time, and I watched every aspect of it, and I listened to the communication between, you know, where we were in Florida and out in the field in Venezuela. And it was amazing to see the professionalism, the quality of leadership, the professionalism. General Raisin Kane is fantastic. Don't forget, we did another one not so long ago. It was called the knocking out of the Iranian nuclear threat, the nuclear power. And that was unbelievable what they did there. And this is something that, gee, I don't know, it's amazing. And to have a few injuries, but no death on our side is really amazing.
Mr. President, critics will say that strong action can risk escalation, but history has shown us that weakness can truly invite chaos. And this military operation clearly sends a message to our adversaries around the world, China, Iran, Russia, that we are no longer the weak administration that we had for 4 years under former President Biden, who tolerated narco-terrorism. What is next for the United States and Venezuela?
Well, we're very strong, and very importantly, if you look at drugs through the oceans, through the seas, they're down 97%. That's the boats. It's sort of related to this, as you know. The drugs are way down, and it's getting very, very tough. It's a whole different look. We have a whole different country. We have a country now that's respected. We have a country. I built the military in my first term, and they gave a little chunk of it away, but it was a lot. But it was a little chunk relative to what we built. But they gave it to Afghanistan so stupidly. It was one of the. Compare this to Afghanistan, where we were a laughing stock all over the world. We're not a laughing stock anymore. No, we have the greatest military in the world by far. We have the greatest military equipment in the world by far. And you had to see this in real time. You had to see this, the professionalism and the bravery, everything about it. And you almost couldn't hold them back. It was like they wanted to go so badly. And most people would have said, I'll take a pass. I know that Charlie would have wanted to go because Charlie's a very brave person. But I know a lot of other people would have said, I think I'll pass on this one. Let's watch it on television. So it's been amazing to see how good they were, how professional they were, how incredible the equipment we have is. I mean, the level of equipment and to see how it worked so perfectly. And, you know, if you compare this to attacks on Iran over the years with, you know, helicopters crashing into each other, the whole thing was a mess. The Jimmy Carter situation, which was a mess, and every other situation compared to this, nobody's ever seen like this. Look, the Iranian attack, knocking out their nuclear power was big. We had peace in the Middle East, and we have it. Without that, you could never have peace in the Middle East. We knocked them out, and look what's happening now to Iran, but we knocked it out. That was, it could not have been better, and this could not have been better. I don't even know which is, these are both really important. If you think about equal and importance, I wonder how it's going to be rated, but knocking out the nuclear power of, think of it, they were ready, they were within 2 months, they would have been a nuclear power. And comparing that to this in a certain different way, I think this might have been actually more complex.
Well, it's interesting.
That was something that was amazing.
It's interesting, Mr. President. We've looked, our own Lucas Tomlinson, our reporter here. I don't know if you knew this intentionally, but the capture of Maduro and his wife coincides with the 6th anniversary of your taking out the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Qasem Soleimani. Interestingly, it's six years after. But let me ask you a question, Mr. President. Because
by the way, that was the third thing, and we have a fourth. We got Soleimani. We have taken out so many. Look at what we did to the leader of ISIS, who's no longer with us, right? And everybody was after for 20 years, and we got him. We've done a lot, but this was something, maybe because it's fresh in our minds, because again, the Iranian situation was so big, knocking that out, and the B-2 bomber, every single missile hit its target, and the target was an air shaft.
Right.
Dark at night. Think of that. Dark at night, no moon. You couldn't see a thing, and every missile went right through that air shaft and just obliterated the place. So that was amazing, and this was amazing.
I wonder, Mr. President, though, I want to ask you because from your Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that the message is pretty clear. The drug trafficking must stop. So was this operation a message that you're sending to
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is part of the national security of the United States in terms of, number one, stopping the flow of illegal narcotics. Number two, stopping the funding of various groups around the world that potentially Maduro funded. I'm not a fan of military interventions like this. I'm not a fan of regime changes. There is potential for this to go badly. But if you do have people waiting
back, we got it all back. One of them was hit pretty hard, but a helicopter, but we got it back. But it just was the right time to do it. We had to do it because it's a war. We're losing 300,000 people a year. We don't lose that much in a war. Okay, if you look, and we had to do it. But he was in a house that was more like a fortress than a house. It had steel doors. It had what they call a safety space where it's, solid steel all around. He didn't get that space closed. He was trying to get into it, but he got bum rushed so fast that he didn't get into that. We were prepared. We had, massive blowtorches and everything else that you need to get through that steel, but we didn't need it. He didn't make it to that area of the house.
Mr. President, your war on narcoterrorism from our southern border and beyond clearly will save American lives. Moving forward for Venezuela, what do you think is next for the Venezuelan people now that you have removed Maduro so that he can face American justice?
Well, we're making that decision now. We can't take a chance on letting somebody else run and just take over where he left off. So we're making that decision now. We'll be involved in it very much. And we want to do liberty for the people. We want to, have a great relationship. I think the people of Venezuela are very, very happy because they love the United States. They were run by essentially a dictatorship or worse. It couldn't have been worse. It was a terrible thing that was taking place in Venezuela. But look, tremendous numbers of people were being killed through drugs. And what they did to our country in sending prisoners and people from mental institutions and drug lords and everything. They sent them by the hundreds of thousands of people into our country. And that is just unforgivable. That's why, he wanted to negotiate at the end, and I didn't want to negotiate. I said, nope, we got to do it. He was trying to negotiate at the end. You probably saw that. And trying hard to make a deal. And I said, this could have been a very foolish thing if it didn't work out. But I said, nope, we can't do it. What he did with drugs is bad. What he did with a lot of other things is bad. But what he did was sending hundreds of thousands of Tren de Aragua and drug dealers. And they emptied out their jails into our country. They emptied out, if you think about it, they emptied out all of their mental institutions into our country. What he did there, and every other thing, is unforgivable.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrer. Mr. President, you're already getting reaction from members of Congress on both sides. One Democrat, Jim McGovern, is saying that you did not get authorization from Congress. And he says Trump just launched an unjustified illegal strike on Venezuela. Wanted to get your reaction to that.
Every military intervention that has not been, the last time Congress declared war was in World War II. Every intervention or military every war or military intervention since World War II could be argued as being illegal.
Well, look, these are weak, stupid people, and they're trying to save themselves from almost destroying our country. If I didn't get elected, our country would not, I don't even think we'd have a country right now. We were heading down the path of destruction. We had inflation. We had high prices. They're the ones that caused high prices, not us. We're bringing the prices way down. We have oil now in many places, $1.99 a gallon. And, you know, when you do oil, everything follows, but everything is following. But no, they would have destroyed our country. If we didn't get elected, if Kamala or a Joe type got elected, if that group got elected, but if Kamala got elected, I don't think at this point we would even have a country. We were laughed at all over the world. We were, the money was flowing out. Everybody was leaving. The companies were leaving. The people were leaving. The wealth was leaving. We have $18 trillion coming back into our country, the biggest number in the history of the world. The second biggest number was $3 trillion. We're at $18 trillion, and it's building factories and plants. It's doing things that no country has ever seen before. But as far as last night is concerned, it was really genius. What they did is genius. And the Democrats, maybe they'll take a shot. You know, they'll take a shot. Oh, all they do is complain. They don't talk about, they should say, you know what, we did a great job. We're stopping drugs from coming into this country. And nobody's been able to do it until we came along. But they should say, great job. They shouldn't say, oh, gee, maybe it's not constitutional. You know, the same old stuff that we've been hearing for years and years and years. They did an incredible job. These men and women that went out there last night, the courage they had, going into an area where, you know, all the lights were turned off. We turned off almost all of the lights in Caracas. I mean, this thing was so organized. And they go into a dark space with machine guns facing them all over the place. And then you hear from a guy that I'd never even heard of him. But you hear from some congressman saying, oh, this is so terrible. We're saving lives. And by the way, the boats, every boat, because that's sort of related to this, every boat that we hit saves 25,000 lives.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any hosannas or thanks from certain Democrats in Congress, that's for sure. But one of the things, you've already obviously cracked down on these drug boats. You've also cracked down on these illegal oil shipments coming out of Venezuela. The countries that negotiate with Venezuela for that illegal oil are already starting to suffer. What do you see as the future of Venezuela's oil industry?
Well, I see that we're going to be very strongly involved in it. That's all. I mean, what can I say? We have the greatest oil companies in the world, the biggest, the greatest, and we're going to be very much involved in it. We can't do something like this, and we're prepared. You know, we were prepared to do a second wave. We were all set, and this was so lethal. This was so powerful that we didn't have to, but we're prepared. We're out there with an armada like nobody's ever seen before, and we're prepared. And frankly, probably thought we were going to have to do it, but we were prepared for a second wave going in.
I want to know, have you made this mistake with your whole...
Mr. President, sorry, Nicole, can you follow up on one thing? And that was when part of Vice President Vance's tweet about an hour ago said that you offered several off-ramps to Maduro that he didn't take. What did those off-ramps look like?
Well, basically, I said you have to give up. You have to surrender. And he was close. But in the end, I really didn't. We had to do something that was really much more surgical, much more powerful. This was much more powerful than anything we could have done. This is amazing. And we learned a lot going into. We learned a lot of things, but this was a very important symbol.
So you compare President Obama's failed, catastrophic intervention in Libya, and then Biden with the invasion that took place under his watch. And we don't know how this is going to work out. God willing, it works out, well, and there's peace and prosperity and wealth in Venezuela. People are wealthier, hopefully, and there's less poverty. It's unbelievable how socialists and communists in the U.S. and elsewhere champion 80 to 90% poverty. There's no communist or socialist country that doesn't have 60, 70, 80% poverty. That's a fact. But so I don't know why you'd want to bring that to any country, especially the U.S. And there's no, when you have 80% poverty, there's no equality or equity, which is also the fascination of the wonderful morally superior leftists. But anyway, you look at the military interventions under President Obama and Biden, or the catastrophe that took place under Biden because of his foreign policy we don't have to get into. There's a stark difference, okay? And again, it's too early to say if this is going to work out, but there's a tremendous difference between Trump and Biden and President Obama. And of course, Bush, who is, you look at Biden, how terrible he was. Bush was even worse.
And I had discussions. I actually spoke to him myself, but I said, you have to give up. You have to surrender.
When did you speak to him?
He was not willing. A week ago. A couple of times, but a week ago.
Mr. President, this is clearly a signature moment for your administration, this military strike, the capture of Maduro.
We've had a lot of signature moments, if you really think about it.
It certainly was. Let's add it to the list, one of the signature moments. But what do you say to the people waking up to this news this morning who are concerned that these actions may result in prolonged involvement of U.S. military in Venezuela?
Well, first of all, I say that what we're doing is saving lives because the drug trafficking is so bad. It's gotten so out of control. And, when you think 97% of the drugs coming in by sea, by ocean, by waterway, 97% down. It's almost nothing left. You don't see ships. You don't see anybody. You see very few ships coming in loaded up with, hundreds of bags of fentanyl, cocaine, and everything else you can imagine. It's virtually stopped. And we'll stop it on land. And this was one of the things that we did to stop it on land. We had to do this. In order to stop it on land, this was a part of it. There are other parts and there are other areas, frankly. But what they did is really amazing. And I think it sends a signal. We're not going to be pushed around as a country anymore by these countries where we want to be politically correct all the time. They're killing our people. If we had a war, if you lost 300,000 people, in the Civil War, we lost 600,000 people. We lose 300,000 people a year to drugs. And we're not going to allow it anymore with any country.
You said that you were prepared for a second wave, and I assume that you still are. But what does the future look like for the Maduro loyalists who are still in Caracas and I assume have not yet fled or been removed?
Well, if they stay loyal, the future is really bad. Really bad for them. If they convert, there's a conversion factor. I would say most of them have converted. He's had very little loyalty. In fact, I noticed that today that some people are marching on the street waving flags, and they're very in support. They have American flags being waved on the streets. So, I mean, I think he's got very little support. Look, he was a dictator that the people hated. So I don't see a lot of that. I don't think we're going to see a lot of that.
Well, will you, Mr. President, throw your support behind opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who, as you recall, won the Nobel Peace Prize and then in turn dedicated it to you for your efforts in pressuring Maduro. Are you going to fully support her to take over to run the country?
Well, we're going to have to look at it. Right now, they have a vice president, as you know. I mean, I don't know about what kind of an election that was, but, the election of Maduro was a disgrace, just like my election was a disgrace. 2020 was a disgrace, and, a real disgrace. Now, 2024 was too big to rig, but what he did was, his was open. I would say, frankly, you want to know the truth? I think Charlie would testify this. It wasn't a hell of a lot worse than what they did to us in 2020. It was our election was a disgrace in 2020, and everyone knows it. And now it's come out, and it's come out even in the legal form. But it was disgraceful. He had an election that was a rigged election, and the people have no love for him. That's for sure. He had very little loyalty, if any loyalty. He was a dictator who was a tough cookie, and he ran it tough, and the people can't believe they got so lucky.
Mr. President, what do you make of the fact that just hours before the airstrike, there was a Chinese delegation meeting with Nicolas Maduro, and we have yet to hear from China any sort of comment on the attacks?
I know nothing about that, but I have a very good relationship with President Xi, and there's not going to be a problem. And they're going to get oil. We're going to allow people to have oil. But we can't take a chance after having done this incredible thing last night of letting somebody else take over, where we have to do it again. We can do it again, too. Nobody can stop us. There's nobody that has the capability that we have. When I watch that war in Russia going on and on and on, and everybody dying, and it's like it's primitive. It's primitive. It's horrible. Horrible.
Could you tell us, Mr. President, a little bit more, because you're talking about the precision of this operation and the brave men and women. Was this Delta Force guys? Were this Navy SEALs? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, they're the most highly trained soldiers in the world. There's nobody that has their talent, because it's talent. It's not just bravery. It's bravery. You have to have the bravery, but it's talent. Nobody has talent like this, and nobody has equipment like we have. I mean, everything was pinpoint. They had everything. They practiced. They actually built a house which was identical to the one they went into, with all the safes and all the steel all over the place, and at the top of stairways and rooms.
It was Delta Force, sir?
I don't want to say, but I will say this. I'm having a news conference in just a little while, so therefore I'm going to have to get off this line pretty soon, but I'm having a news conference at 11, and we're going to be talking about it. And I will say that I'm very proud to be an American.
As are we, Mr. President. Will we be hearing from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth about what went into the planning and the execution of this incredible operation?
Yes, and General Kane and some other people, they'll be telling you things that we can't tell you. We're not going to say everything, because we have things that nobody even knows about. Nobody has even a clue about, and we don't want to talk about that. And there's no reason to. But you'll be seeing a lot of things. So we're going to have a pretty open news conference, and we have to make sure that Venezuela doesn't go bad again. It went bad. It was a great country 20 years ago.
With the amount of oil and natural resources and intellect and talent, Venezuela should be one of the wealthiest countries in the region, in the world. It has so many natural resources, so many natural advantages. Venezuela should be a wealthy country. It should not be mired in poverty.
And now it's horrible. Remember, I used to say that if they get elected, the other side, the people that we're talking about, if they get elected in our country, it will be Venezuela on steroids. Do you remember that? I used to say that all the time, Charlie, right?
Indeed.
We would have been Venezuela on steroids, meaning we would have been a bigger version of Venezuela. But the end result, we would have been a failed nation. Had they gotten elected, we would have been a failed nation. So I'll get ready for a news conference. And,
real quickly.
if Democrats went 4 more years after Biden, which was an impossibility because Biden's tenure was so terrible and horrible, the poverty rate would have skyrocketed. Lord knows what would have happened on the world stage. The country would have ceded autonomy, authority to multinational organizations even further than it did, even more so than it did in President Trump's last year and Biden's first year. But President Trump's last year, by the way, when they blame him for what took place, he did not have control of the U.S. government. It was Democrats and media had pretty much the most influence in Trump's last year in office. And we saw what took place when they have extreme influence. Economies are shut down. There's hysteria. There's a counter on CNN. There was a counter of how many people lost their lives. It was like a stock market chyron or and it was just unbelievable hysteria, the mania that the wonderful morally superior Democrats primarily, but also the never Trumpers fell in line. It was just unbelievable. The media was able to rip apart families, friends. I mean, it doesn't take much, and God bless left, right, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. It doesn't take much for morally superior, highly educated Democrats to disown friends and family, or even key Teslas. In many, not all Democrats, of course, but there's a small percentage of morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats who are beautiful people. They're beautiful people. They possess wisdom. They're wonderful. But you put CNN, the Washington Post, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Atlantic, about 3-4 months of hysteria. You ain't getting invited to no Thanksgiving. You could kiss Thanksgiving and birthday parties and get-togethers and lunches, and you could kiss that goodbye. It takes only about 3 months to indoctrinate a morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat or progressive. It only takes 3 months of concerted media and experts. And they'll push to shut down state economies. They'll disown friends and family. Because it's about morality. The morality among a great many people. This is not just Democrats or Republicans. If your morality stems from media, you have a major problem. You have a major problem in life because you lack context and understanding of history and how any media, left or right. The difference, though, is that Fox News doesn't indoctrinate individuals by and large to disown friends and family. MSNBC, CNN, and others, the condemnation, the mocking, the denigration, the preaching, the pontificating, the lecturing, it's completely different ballgame. Okay, when conservative Republicans want to lecture a sermon, or conservatives in general, or apolitical people in general, they go to church, they go to a place of worship, and they can hear about a lecture on morality. When a morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat wants to hear a lecture on morality, they turn on The View or they read the New York Times, and then suddenly the lies by omission are definitely real, and Trump tried to foment a rebellion, and the Russians wanted Trump, and everything else that they believe that's a hoax.
Real quickly before we let you go, though, can you tell us where Maduro and his wife are right this second?
Well, they'll be heading to New York. They were indicted in New York, and also.
So are they taken to a ship first, and then?
Yes, to Iwo Jima. They're on a ship.
Okay.
But they'll be heading into New York. The helicopters took them out, and they went by helicopter in a nice flight. I'm sure they loved it. But they've killed a lot of people. Remember that they killed a lot of people, and
a lot of Americans.
Even people in their own country. They killed a lot of people to maintain power. He's a very vicious person.
Well, President Trump, I'm incredibly grateful to you for coming on this morning. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. We know that you've got a lot on your plate these days, but we're very appreciative, and we look forward to your press conference at 11.
Well, remember one thing, our country now, it's not because of this, but long before this, almost from the time I took office, it's gone so fast. Our country is hotter than it's ever been before. And we had a dead country a year and a half ago. We had a dead country. This country was dead with Biden.
Biden, the only thing that made Biden slightly better than George W. Bush was how inept he was. And, sadly, the fact that he had no vision and he wasn't likely running the show. He was, unfortunately, one fry short of a Happy Meal, which actually saved the country further in a very bizarre way, because the people around him, again, were so inept that there was almost a limit to the damage that they see. The way Democrats and media and a lot of this is a different topic altogether. They use the word dangerous. Trump is dangerous. Look at the Biden years. Look what took place during the Biden years. Look at crime. Look at how the last year in Trump's office, you cannot pin on Trump at all. At all. You had hysteria and mania and this fabricated zeitgeist where you go from the last year in Trump's office, Trump is in office, shutting down the U.S. economy. How can you shut down the U.S. economy because of what? It was one of the greatest economic sins in American history. It was so foolish, and it destroyed so many lives. And the experts said, go ahead and do it. The experts got us into the Vietnam War. The experts said, shut down the U.S. economy. The experts are routinely wrong on a global scale. Routinely. Every generation, the experts, the highly educated. That doesn't mean you don't listen to an expert, but the expertise of an expert is finite and should be a concise, narrow expertise. Not like you don't have people who push to shut down the global economy and the U.S. economy, who not only aren't economists, but in other fields and have other incentives and motivations. You certainly do not cede autonomy and give control of your country to a multinational organization, which is what took place, which is what Democrats push for routinely. We can get into that, but I'm getting lost in the weeds here and, going into a different topic. But hit subscribe if you're new. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. We'll have a upload there. This is huge, historic, and again, I'm not a fan of regime changes at all. If it helps the people of Venezuela, if the poverty rate decreases, if the poverty rate decreases and there's more wealth and people are freer, that's what counts. Like I say, God bless the people of Venezuela. God bless America. Let's continue.
It is 8 a.m. on the East Coast, and if you are just waking up this morning, we are following breaking news. President Trump announcing the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro overnight in a large-scale U.S. military operation.
Attorney General Pam Bondi confirming Maduro and his wife have been indicted in New York on drug and weapons charges. The couple, quote, will soon face the full wrath of American justice.
It comes after explosions rocked the capital of Caracas and surrounding states. Early this morning, President Trump is expected to hold a news conference
where the National Mission Force Special Operations Forces were launched, likely from the USS Iwo Jima offshore after the Air Department, the jets and helicopters on board had been moved to Puerto Rico. Those forces, the strike force, assaulted Maduro's compound in the pre-dawn hours after those airstrikes from U.S. military.
By the way, to my super chat, thank you, Paul Bartlett. Thank you so very much, as always, my friend. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you, Paul, in Australia. Thank you.
aircraft took place in Caracas around 2 in the morning, Caracas time, 1 in the morning, East Coast time. And President Trump posting to Truth Social after Maduro and his wife had left the country. I'll read it. The president posted, quote, "The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter." And we heard from Venezuela's leader just a day ago, guys, in a car, of a dash cam video saying he was open to a deal with President Trump. He said he would be open to combating the drug trafficking. Recall for many days now, there have been increased sanctions on Maduro's regime. His regime had been called a cartel, had been sanctioned as a foreign terrorist organization. We'd seen dozens of strikes against drug boats in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific. And then this morning at 2 in the morning, we saw this dramatic airstrikes, likely from F-22 fighter jets, stealth fighter jets. Also recall those F-35s that have been moved to Puerto Rico, likely taking part in the strikes. We saw B-1 bombers, a flight in the Caribbean just last evening. It's not clear if those also took place. We also, as you can see in the video coming up, dozens of U.S. Army helicopters, likely from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Those are the Night Stalkers. Those are the world's most elite pilots that would have taken the strike force into Caracas to detain Nicolas Maduro. This appears, from the American side, to be bloodless. It appears all aircraft were able to successfully execute their mission, and all American military personnel, those elite Tier 1 forces from the Delta Force, the Ranger Regiment, and perhaps SEAL Team 6, all made it out of the country in one piece. And let's not forget, this was a showdown between President Trump and Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. And as Elliot Abrams told me a few weeks ago, there can only be one winner, and President Trump doesn't like to lose. And that's what we saw in these strikes, guys.
So obviously for the past couple of weeks, Maduro has been looking out and seeing the most advanced flotilla in world history parked outside of his country. It's probably been a little bit nerve-wracking for him. But obviously the operation, this operation was successful and is over. But I don't think that we're necessarily going to see the USS Gerald Ford pull anchor and leave the region anytime soon.
Doesn't appear that way, Charlie, although it is worth noting that Ford has been at sea for 6 months, deploying back in June. She was moved from Europe to move to the Caribbean, part of what the Trump administration has said repeatedly, and with this new national security strategy, that the focus would be on the Western Hemisphere. We saw it in the new national security strategy that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth unveiled at the Reagan National Defense Forum. And you're right, we've seen this huge buildup of U.S. military forces in the Caribbean, the USS Gerald Ford Strike Group, not just the aircraft carrier and squadrons of F-18 Super Hornets, but also the USS Iwo Jima amphibious ready group with thousands of Marines and, of course, dozens of attack helicopters. It's likely those Night Stalkers, the elite pilots that flew the strike force into Venezuela, were based aboard Iwo Jima. We also saw dozens of other warships in the region as well, armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. And this buildup clearly had an impact on Nicolas Maduro. That's why in that interview, that's why we likely saw him almost pleading to the Trump administration for mercy. And perhaps this operation had been planned for a number of days. Remember, we had the strike in Nigeria targeting ISIS forces on Christmas Day. We've been hearing something was in the works for the past few days, and we hadn't seen President Trump on camera in the last few days. The last time we heard from him was New Year's Eve, Charlie, when a reporter asked him, "What's your goal for the new year?" And the president said peace, Charlie.
Lucas, with Maduro being gone, taken into U.S. custody by the DOJ, it leaves his vice president, who we've only heard from on state TV, saying that they wanted proof of life of Maduro and his wife. Have you gotten any more information on what is going on there? Do we have any indication of what is happening? Will there be a regime change?
Well, President Maduro is no longer running the country, and that statement from the vice president of Venezuela confirmed what President Trump said about Maduro and his wife had been removed from the country. We did hear from President Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi. If you could pull up that statement on X, I can read that for our viewers. Pam Bondi wrote, quote, Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. Now, it's notable, Doc, when you asked what comes next in Venezuela, senior official who used to be posted at the Pentagon just told me recently that there are 25 to 50 Venezuelan generals that have bank accounts in excess of billions of dollars, not millions, but billions. You have to wonder if any kind of opposition leader like Maria Corina Machado were to come to the country, would those generals support her new leadership? Or
okay, we might be even more corrupt. You got $8 billion just in Minnesota alone that Tim Walz funneled. Well, I say, not that he funneled personally. There's no evidence right now that Governor Tim Walz committed any crimes. No evidence at all that Ilhan Omar committed any crimes. We have $8 billion funneled from the federal government. Just $8 billion with Nick Shirley, a journalist. We just found out the past couple of months, and it just became a thing the past couple of weeks because of Nick Shirley, who deserves the Pulitzer Prize. You have $8 billion just the other day you found out. Then there's billions that Doge found out about that, of course, Democrats didn't want to hear about, so they started keying Teslas. In terms of dollar amounts, the U.S. is way more corrupt than the generals in Venezuela. The difference is that you have an entire political party, the Democratic Party, well, also Republicans too, but Democrats have it down to a science. Doge and Elon Musk or Nick Shirley and other, FTX, by the way, the billions in 2022 with a Ponzi scheme. There's no corruption greater than perhaps a political party in the U.S. that allows the corruption or benefits from it to take place. Those Venezuelan generals are poor compared to all the billions and billions that are siphoned and laundered through non-governmental organizations, through Ponzi schemes and cryptocurrency, which was FTX, through federal funding that is siphoned into by individuals in Minnesota that potentially were allowed to do so by Waltz and others. The Democratic Party presides over in major blue cities and blue states billions upon billions upon billions of potential fraud and waste. So you just look what's happening in Minnesota right now. There's no comparison. This is why they were keying Teslas, because it's their team, their side, and it's like they want Medicare for all and single payer. Well, not really, but some people do. But they don't realize that all of the graft and bribery and corruption and fraud makes it literally impossible to implement any of their alleged policy objectives.
Or whoever is designated by the Trump administration, if they can make that happen in the country.
Well, that's such a great point to raise, Lucas, whether or not these generals would trust someone like Maria Corina Machado, because the Cartel del Soles, Cartel of the Suns, is specifically named that because the epaulets, the sun-like shaped dressing on the generals' uniforms, that's where they got it. The reason why they were given that name is because the military is the cartel. That's what ultimately Nicolas Maduro is being indicted on in terms of running a cartel organization of narco-terrorists. You mentioned, though, Maria Corina Machado. Here's a little bit of what she had to say on Fox and Friends. Watch.
I completely trust the strategy President Trump is developing and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They know very well with whom they're dealing with. This is not a legitimate president. This is the head of a criminal structure that was already defeated in a presidential election by landslide. So they know how to deal with these kind of individuals that are criminals, narco-terrorists. And I believe that Maduro will get a very clear picture of what are his options and what's the future for Venezuela.
What would be your message to Americans who are worried that this could become another costly foreign entanglement for them?
I believe it's exactly the contrary. Maduro started this war. President Trump is ending this war. A transition to democracy in Venezuela will make the Americas, including the United States, safer, more secure, and more prosperous. Because Venezuela, our country, has been turned into that safe haven for all those enemies, forces that want to undermine the institutions of the United States and also kill people in Venezuela and in your country. So we are solving and dismantling a criminal structure that has produced great pain and turned our country, our nation, into the best ally of the United States, a security shield for the Americas, and a huge opportunity for energy security as well. And one thing very important, Rachel, millions of Venezuelan migrants will come back home the day Maduro goes.
So that's what Maria Corina Machado had to say back in November. Is it your sense, Lucas, that at this press conference in just a few hours at 11 a.m., that we may learn more about whether or not the Trump administration is putting its backing behind someone like Machado, or if there's another plan for the governance now without Maduro?
Recall, Griff, that the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, received about 80% of support inside the country. What officials have told me in the past is, unlike Iraq and Afghanistan, in Venezuela, it's a very united country, both politically and ethnically. You don't have Sunni, Shia, Druze, Kurds in Venezuela. It is one people, and they are pretty united. In fact,
So that's the key here. That's the key. There's one Venezuelan people, one culture, one religion, one history, one people, and one country. And so you don't have different factions. You don't have sectarian violence. You don't have all the terrible, terrible atrocities and just the unbelievable chaos and mayhem that the Bush administration, Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Tony Blair. It's really funny how modern day quote unquote historians or activists they don't even know who Tony Blair was. They have no clue who Dick Cheney was, almost certainly. And the people who pushed for the regime changes in the early 2000s, it was not the doing of one small country or one group of advocates, or it was world leaders led by George W. Bush. And by the way, certain major pundits who have done a 180, thank goodness, which we won't get into that. But if you know history, you know exactly who I'm talking about. There were people who pushed for the regime changes in the early 2000s. Those were catastrophic because of the sectarian violence. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this is not and those were counterinsurgency conflicts, guerrilla warfare, like the Vietnam War. This is very, very different. Hit subscribe, go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. We'll do a quick upload on that. God bless you all. God bless America. And God bless the soldiers and American families and soldiers and veterans and the soldiers who are able to do this. God bless the people of Venezuela. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. Thanks, everybody. To my super chat, Paul.